Phil Williams on Times Radio.
Thursday night, always music news with Briggy Smale. And last week, if you were listening to us, Briggy was telling us about a relatively unknown DJ called Scaramanga Silk. Just remind us of the story.
Okay, so Scaramanga had a track that was released in 2008. And then just in December, it was on Discogs, which is like this online marketplace. And just in December, so 12 years later, whatever, somebody bought it for nearly £30,000. But because they bought it from Discogs, Scaramanga Silk didn't get any of the money.
So that's the story so far, is it?
Yes.
And then you made contact with Scaramanga Silk. I'm delighted to say that Scaramanga Silk joins us now on Times Radio. Good evening.
Good evening, Phil. Good evening, Briggy. How are you?
Oh, hello.
Yeah, really well. We're both really well. Thank you very much.
Very good, very good.
Thanks for doing this for us. So tell us first of all then about this record selling for the 30K.
Yes, so about 2 weeks ago, Discogs contacted me about the news. I was obviously quite stunned. Initially, I thought it was some sort of wind-up. It just seemed, a bit too surreal. And then, yes, they I got talking to them. And then last week, they sort of published the news about my record from 2008. And, yes, it's been a bit crazy since then.
Can you just describe to people what Discogs is? I mean, I said it's like an online marketplace, but how come they got a copy of your record, which they could then sell and you not get any money for it?
Okay, so yes, so Discogs isn't like a traditional record store. It's a bit like, like an eBay for records. Slightly different. It's not an auction site, but what Discogs allows private individuals, so literally anybody can register an account on there and start selling records. So if you had a record collection, you'd be able to just put out your records and you can set whatever price you want. And I think you can allow people to make offers to you as well.
So we haven't got this one. What we've got is Life in the Fazlo Lane. So we just want to give people a flavour of your music, Scaramanga. So let's hear Life in the Fazlo Lane, Rufus. Hey, talk us through the instruments you've used there, then.
So this track is pretty much completely made using software. So it's all plugins, software synthesizers, virtual drum machines, basically, and a little bit of sampling.
Can I just ask, so the track that was sold for such a large amount of money was called Choose Your Weapon.
Yes.
Which apparently you wrote sort of in response to the knife and gun crime. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because obviously we can't hear it. Is it similar to the track we've just heard? And also just tell us a bit about the sort of like the message behind the song.
Sure. So, so Choose Your Weapons, it's not quite a similar style as that. It is sort of dance music in that sort of category. So, I mean, probably the best sort of comparison would be, I was very much influenced by people like The Prodigy at the time, so that kind of breakbeat kind of rave sort of sound. And yes, so it wasn't just a record. So what I was doing at the time was a little bit different. It was a piece of music. There was an art print with the package as well, and there's also a poem. And the overarching theme was a response to knife and gun crime, which unfortunately, as you would have seen in the news last week, is still a massive issue. And I'm quite a local to the area of Croydon, so yeah, very, very saddening to see that news last week.
Yeah. Why do you think Choose Your Weapon managed to get so much money? I mean, not sort of saying anything about your songwriting ability. It's just a hell of a lot of money for one track, isn't it? So I just wonder why that one in particular. Do you know anything about the buyer?
No, so when Discogs contacted me, I obviously had all of these questions. So I did go back to them to try and sort of find out, and they've informed me that due to their privacy policy, they can't disclose details of the buyer and seller. And as of yet, whoever's bought this record, who I'm assuming is some kind of billionaire, if they can afford that kind of price tag. Obviously, it's a different world to the one that I live in. Would hopefully. So, I mean, we can only speculate. So, I'm not sure if you're aware, but at the time, it was a promotional record. So, that means it was basically only at that time created to give away to sort of DJs and radio stations like yourselves in order to try and get a bit of a buzz. So, there were only 20 copies of the record that actually went out. And part of the issue for me at the time was we were meant to go on and do a broader release, but we kept hitting quite a few problems in the process. So unfortunately, never actually got a full release, and that may be what influenced the price. And also because it's kind of got an art thing going on, maybe the person was more on the artistic side. It's really hard to speculate. But there was a bit of a buzz around it at the time, and back in 2008, one of those copies that I did send out did actually end up appearing on eBay and sold for about £500. But obviously, to go from £500 to £30,000 is quite exceptional.
Is this an all-out buyout kind of thing? I mean, if the person who buys this then sticks it in a sample and it becomes a massive smash, is that you out at that point financially? That you've got your 30k and that's it?
No, so whoever's bought records, literally just like if you went to a record store, but they haven't got the actual publishing or the rights, so I retain that. So if literally it's just like they bought a copy of a record from a record store. Oh, really? Yeah, they haven't. It's not like a license. It's literally like they've gone in, found a bargain. Well, not a bargain, obviously, quite the opposite of a bargain. But found something in a shop that they really want, and they've. They obviously don't have the sort of...
Do you know what the way you explained? Do you know what it reminds me of? Do you remember when Harry Enfield used to do the antique shop? And someone would wander into the antique shop. And they'd say, how much is this? And he would say, well, ordinarily it would be £5, but I saw you coming, so it's now £3,000. And they'd say, that's marvellous, I'll take two. And it just is a little bit of that to it, really, isn't it? So I didn't realise that. I'm sorry for the lack of understanding. Thank you for clarifying.
No,
so
not at all.
Someone's picked up your record in the way that we all used to do when we used to sift through record, vinylisers or whatever, but they've paid 30 grand for it, and there's no rights or anything. They just paid 30 grand for that tune.
Yeah, so I mean, this is. I mean, it's thrown up some very odd sort of questions. I've got very mixed feelings about the whole thing. In some ways, someone's clearly massively profiting from my work, but in other ways, it's quite flattering that someone will give it that kind of value. But the bigger sort of problem is that in the sort of second-hand or the resale market, there's nothing in place to give any remuneration for musical artists. And that kind of feels like a slightly dated model. And obviously what's going on in the world with, musicians really, struggling, with what's happened with the pandemic, it might be an actual opportunity for some of these kinds of platforms, because they all charge commission. If they could allocate some commission from that to say artists and labels, that could be a really great model, and it really gives something back.
Yeah, it's hard enough for artists to make money anyway these days, isn't it? Because through streaming platforms, which don't really pay, not in the old days when you actually used to save your money up and go and enjoy buying a record or whatever, and you pay a decent amount, which most people might go to the artist. I saw that you also said on your Facebook post that there's your vinyl of Designer's Scribble album is £100 on Discogs, yet you can still buy it direct from the label for £18. So that does raise the issue of losing out yet again. If people, because of the publicity that you've got, the Discogs have got through this sale, people are now going directly to Discogs rather than to your label, when you might actually then get some money for it.
Yes, I literally, just spotted that yesterday, and I mean that. Unfortunately, again, I've been speaking to sort of people who are very active in the sort of record collecting, and obviously I'm a massive music fan, and I've previously really built a record collection, not so much in recent years, but the challenge is because there's no sort of system in place. It's not. I don't like this sort of term, but it's very similar to the behaviour of ticket outs. So you'll remember in the past you want to go to a gig and then it'd sell out and you'd have to turn up and there'd be people outside ramping up the prices. That's now happening online with records. And so, it can just be any individual who would have had a copy of that record. It doesn't have to be a big company. And unfortunately, it's not just bad for the artists, it's really bad for the consumers as well. They're, like that example you've given us, 5 times more than the regular price, and it's directly available from a very small independent record label that I'm affiliated to, who would, be massive, who would massively benefit from just the odd sale if people were to go direct rather than using these resale platforms.
Give us the name of the label, just so anyone listening who wants to check you out.
Oh, that's very kind. They're called Microspiral, and they're at markspiral.com.
Great. And you know what? Since the story, I've noticed I've been looking at your Facebook. You're very, very, very funny. You do tell some funny jokes, but also there's something. I think there's been a lot of love for you. There's this Twitter account that's been set up by somebody in the name of your Spotify account. And
yes,
you referred to that's sweet. How did you feel about that? Tell us what they said.
I'm not sure. Well, I mean, yes. So some people have been. I've got to be honest. There's been very mixed reactions. There've been some very negative reactions as well.
Really?
There's been people saying, there's people saying it's some kind of marketing ploy or a PR stunt. There's people saying that it's some kind of like dirty cash operation, like there's money laundering going on. So it's such a crazy story. I mean, I can totally understand why that sort of stuff. But going back to what you're saying in terms of this, it's quite amusing, I guess, the Spotify account. But I do think it is lightly mocking me. So someone has basically set up an account and they're basically pretending that they're my Spotify account. And from what I can gather, I think you alluded to it on the show last week, when this story broke, I only, a lot of the press highlighted how relatively unknown I am. And one of the main points they made was that I only have 7 people following me on Spotify, which obviously is a horrendously no number. So this guy, whoever's doing this now, is following almost every day, posting stuff about how many followers I'm now getting, and they're reacting as if they're my Spotify, making some slightly witty comments. So there's a few that I think are maybe a little bit close, but yes, these things happen, don't they?
Okay, sorry, I misread that then. I thought that was something that was, quite charming. So it seems like it's been quite a bizarre week or so for you then, with people coming out, having a comment, having a view of your music and stuff. Were you just sort of carrying on writing music and it's just come out of the blue? Are you sort of releasing tracks anyway? Is there stuff that people can get of yours that's a current releases?
Well, this is one of the. So I had obviously a little bit of notice that there was going to be an announcement, because Discogs had informed me they were going to write a sort of an article on their website, but I had no idea that it would, blow up into what has become, like you're saying, a very surreal week. So it's tricky. I mean, it's not really a way I'd want to be talked about or have my music talked about. As an artist, I mean, yes, it's lovely to be able to make a living from it. However, I want my music to be measured on the sort of cultural value, not really the financial value. And it's, unfortunately, it looks like most people are just really motivated by sort of money, and just literally everyone is just focused on the financial aspect, and it's just sad that literally cash seems to rule everything around me at this time. But it's just one of those things. I couldn't control it, and yes, I am still, like I say, working on music all of the time. I don't actually have anything scheduled right now, so there's nothing really in the pipeline. So I'm not actually in a sort of massive position to sort of benefit from what's happened, because that particular record is deleted, and there's no plans to reissue or re-release it. So yes, but it's been a very, very surreal week.
And tell me this before we say goodbye to you.
Yes.
The name Scaramanga Silk, it's got to come from the man with the golden gun, hasn't it?
Yes, Phil, you alluded to it last week. Yes, I mean, fantastic film, beautiful character. Obviously, sadly, that actor's passed in recent years. But yes, huge fan.
Very good, very good. So are you writing now, then are you in a period of production, and are you hoping to release a batch of new stuff soon?
So, like I said, there's not any.
Is that your cat, by the way?
immediate
Whose
release.
cat's
Sorry, that's my dog. He'd been really good. It's getting a bit excited. I'm so sorry to have a dog on the radio. That is not
What's your dog
meant
called?
to happen.
What's the dog called, and what's it like? What does it look like?
So he's a miniature Jack Russell, and he's called Sam.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
right, Sam.
He said that he'll start barking if he starts to. But in terms of only current projects, I've been working on a soundtrack for a little independent movie in the States, but there's no current release date on that. So that's my sort of most impending project.
You need to go and play with Sam, I reckon.
I do. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Briggy. Thanks so much for having me on. It's been lovely to talk with you both.
Wishing you the best of luck. Honestly, you're the sweetest guy, and thank you so much for getting back in touch so promptly. And just wish you all the best in the world. I love your music, and I think hopefully, your fortune will come to you. And just feel the love from people who are supportive of you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Yeah, what she said. Take care and go and look after Sam, Scaramanga Silk, at Scaramanga_Silk if you want to follow him on Twitter. More music news after this, 8:21.